and the winning continues here at the White House every day. Today, a federal judge right here in Washington, D.C. denied the Associated Press's emergency request for a temporary restraining order to restore their privilege of returning to the White House press pool. And the judge's denial of the Associated Press's request reinforces what I said from the podium last week and what President Trump has been saying. Covering the American presidency in the most intimate and limited spaces in this White House, in the Oval Office, on the Air Force One, is a privilege. It is not a legal right. And we want all voices to have that opportunity. And that's why we've expanded the James S. Brady briefing room to invite truly legitimate, independent journalists, podcasters, and other media types into that room to cover this president with honesty and accuracy and with real mindfulness of what the American people actually care about.
So you said yesterday, made a lot of news, bad-mouthing Trump, not a good idea for Zelensky.
Of course
what's the thought process here?
Well, look, I mean, President Zelensky, his country wouldn't exist without the generosity of the United States of America. So say thank you. And if you disagree with the president, pick up the phone and call him or call one of our great diplomats. Don't go on a media tour around Europe bad-mouthing the President of the United States. It's insulting. It's insulting to him. It's insulting to me. It's insulting to the American people. And by the way, it's stupid. All of us who know the president would tell you that bad-mouthing him in public is not the way to get President Trump to change his mind. So I think Zelensky needs to have some better consultants.
So I'm more in the wait-and-see attitude about how this all plays out.
How do you think about the self-described chainsaw approach that DOJ is taking to the federal government? Is it something you support?
Yeah, it's too binary to say support or not. Here's what I support, okay? The government and everybody would know the government's inefficient, not very competent, and it needs a lot of work. And so you and I, it's not just waste and fraud, it's outcomes. Why are we spending the money on these things? Are we getting what we deserve? What should we change? So I think doing that needs to be done. Remember, it was tried by Al Gore and Bill Clinton. It was tried by a bunch of other folks in the past. Yes, they should try. You have to understand that whenever you go to any big institution or the government, the bureaucracy pushes back on everything. And they will hear every little thing they're going to push back on. So you have to be strong if you're going to do it. I'm hoping it's quite successful. If there's overreach, things they're doing which are not legal, the court should stop it. But I'm hoping that's not the case. But again, it's very early stages to tell exactly what it's going to mean and how it's going to affect an economy.
Is success defined by bringing down the deficit?
I think ending fraud and waste and abuse, if it brings down the deficit, yes, but also making systems more. If you just identify that we can build better systems across these departments that be more effectuate the jobs it's supposed to do, modern technology, like the FAA, you've heard about the FAA, absolutely should be doing that. Now, some of them may actually cost money in the long run, but in the short run, but it'll save a lot of money in the long run, and it saves lives. So we have to learn to do the thing right. It's not just about the deficit. It's about building the right policies, procedures, and the government we deserve.
So, Dan Crenshaw obviously is not emotionally prepared to lead anything, and he's out of control. He's out of control, and I think that he's a really volatile person. I hope he gets help. I mean that, and but he's also a pretty sinister person, I would say, whose priorities are not aligned with his party's voters, but also have kind of nothing to do with the United States. So
right.
I object. I want to be honest. I feel sorry for Dan Crenshaw. I've had conflict with Dan Crenshaw. I felt like he was emotionally out of control. And so I feel sorry for him. But I also think it's not just him. It's a lot of the leadership of that party just doesn't put the United States first at all. And, they all want to suck up to Trump and America first. Really? Where's the money going? It's not going here. It's going to the countries whose lobbies control you.
Right.
That's the truth.
And now, here's John Ritchie and L. Todd Wood.
Hey, for those of you that are not on the video, that are on the audio only product, that last cold opening, that piece, that is one of 300 migrant plantations that is being built in Scotland right now. That one was from the county of Tipperary. And you can see they brought in all this. They showed the before and after. They showed this area. It's all ag, plush, beautiful. And you can see the village in the frame in the background, this beautiful little village out in the middle of Scotland there. And then you have the after, all this construction, and there's hundreds and hundreds of migrant housing that's going to be put in. And this guy that I follow, he's a blogger, and he's had his stuff seized. They've been going after him like crazy out in Scotland. This is what they're facing now. He even says, we need help and we need it fast. Doesn't this look a lot like what we saw in World War II?
Well, you know what it looks like? It looks like what's going on in Georgia. We need to have Bill Quinn on, which you met down at CPAC, about the Hyundai plant in Rome, Georgia, that was just raided by ICE, and hundreds of guys ran for the fences. Yeah, so we that's on video. I mean, so this whole globalist, fascist, corporo-fascist thing is happening everywhere.
Yeah, it's just they're moving in. They call them migrant plantations in Scotland. And they're moving in. That was from a place called Clonmel. It's called a Clonmel migrant refugee camp in the county of Tipperary. I just look at this, and the guy that writes, he says, we need help. We don't even know how to stop this now. They're going to the streets. They're being arrested. We played some stuff earlier on. This to me is just crazy. I mean, just nuts.
It's what they're doing everywhere. Destroy the Western civilization, bring in other, lower income workers, and build a fascist global state. I mean, that's what they're doing. I was laughing though, because I expected to see Billy Bob Thornton in that clip from Landman. That was the band camp.
Right. Expect him to come out. Yeah. That looked a lot like it. They look like oil pads out there.
Yeah, exactly.
Unfortunately, they've got some problems. I want to welcome you all to Output. I'm your host, John Ritchie. He's L. Todd Wood. Today's the 25th of 2025, and here is your 5-point surge. Dan Bongino's in as the deputy director of Cash Patel. Lefties are going nuts on that one. Harvard Polling's has no good news for Dems. But we've already told you about that, and we're out in front of it. And we got somebody that's going to come on here, and we're going to break that one down for you. EU to send out more military aid to the Ukraine, more sanctions against Russia. UK unveils sweeping sanctions on Russia and its global backers. Apple's back in the U.S. Alibaba to invest in China more than $52 billion in the AI over the next 3 years. That's going to be their counter to losing Apple, I think. The ICC asks to investigate Biden and others, that's the international courts, and other former U.S. officials for complicity in war crimes. Interesting times, how quickly things are flipping, right? The whole, you see AP, Caroline Levitt, she's come out and she says, AP lost. They're not going to, the president actually gets to decide who gets to come into the White House and sit in the press room.
Yeah, well, that's a good thing, right? Hopefully they're watching Output, and we'll be on the list.
Hopefully we'll be there soon enough, right? We'll be sitting on that little bench over by Caroline Levitt, right?
So we'll see what happens.
Now I know Bill would like to be in there as well.
Yeah,
Bill
exactly.
says he's championing at the bit there to go in there, and you got 3 more MSNBC shows gone.
No, it's a new day, my friend, and guess what? We have a media company that tells the truth.
Yeah,
so,
there you go.
We're kind of positioned pretty good right now.
But I want to share this one with you. I want to share with you why these MSNBCers, because I hear this all the time. It's the market speaking. No, it's not. This is what happens when you cut their money off at USAID. And Pfizer knows that they're not going to be able to pay billions anymore to support all these media companies to push out the government propaganda. The money is gone. And they know it. You know what they're going to actually have to do? Go out and sell ads, and do some real news, right?
Maybe that's why they're letting us back on the ad network slowly. We'll see.
Yeah, yeah. This is definitely heard somebody. I do believe it's the writing of the, the world is getting upright again. Things are balancing out
That
again.
Scottish stuff is disturbing, man. We need to stay on that. Let's make that.
Yeah, we do. And again, we played it the other day. They pulled the police and these trucks out there, and who'd they go after? Not the migrants. They went after the.
There's something
people
dark going on in the UK for sure.
Yeah. And then, of course, our friend Dan Crenshaw, he's out there threatening to kill on a hot mic. He threatens to kill Tucker Carlson.
Well, one thing I know about Tucker is I talked with him personally up at his studio in Maine. That dude is well armed.
So, yeah.
Better watch out.
He's probably not. Dan might want to be careful about that one.
He's also got his own security team around there who are pretty highly trained too. So I wouldn't mess with Tucker.
I wouldn't either. I think he's up there high enough for that one. We have Mark Mitchell from Rasmussen Polling. He's going to be joining us here right after the break. Looking forward to getting him in here. We, of course, had a great session with him during CPAC. Enjoyed that. So he's always a dearth of information on this polling. I especially want to talk about this Harris polling because it's pretty much aligns with what we already talked about, right? Yeah. We're seeing this already. And then we have Rob Maness. He's going to be joining us at 11:15. And we're bringing Colonel Maness in here to discuss the DEI and the
Pentagon,
the Pentagon, a lot of stuff happening there. Now we got Raising Cane coming in. Yeah. I'm excited. This is going to be a blast, but we are a packed show today. So we're going to go to this quick break. And on the other side, Mark Mitchell and Rasmussen Polling will be joining us.
It's News from the Edge. It's Output with John Ritchie and L. Todd Wood.
Through the pandemic, we can never be caught unprepared again. And so many Americans, when COVID hit, they had nothing in the house. Stores were shut down and doctors' offices were shut down. And even if doctors prescribed drugs, hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, pharmacists wouldn't fill the prescriptions. That was a nightmare.
Now the situation is much worse. We have these horrible supply chain problems. In our emergency medical kit at the Wellness Company, we have 8 prescription drugs that are all potentially life-saving.
Most people who died with COVID, they died in the hospital because they didn't receive early treatment.
Every American family should have one of these.
I can tell you the Wellness Company kit is the answer.
My friends gain more and more weight, and then eventually I got to tell you, this is a little dark, but bad diet literally killed my whole crew.
Wow.
Diabetes, a stroke, all kinds of stuff. It's like, you had a stroke? You're not even 50 years old. You guys got to quit eating this stuff. Your body knows what's what. You're not conscious of this, but that's why people will go to the refrigerator and they'll grab this and that and the other and put together this outrageously elaborate combination of foods. Your body's trying to reach balance. Unbeknownst to us, our bodies are always trying to reach homeostasis. You can't eat all of this stuff and expect to live a long time. And one thing led to another, and I went, forget this. We're going to make our own product. So we partnered with one of the world's top 3 biochemists where nutrition specific study is concerned. I said, all I want is the best nutritional and immune support product in the world. So we mix it in yogurt. It's a powder. I got a bag of it here. I keep one on the console all the time, just so I can show people.
Yeah.
And it's a powder. Now, this is not candy. This is hardcore nutrition. And sugar is an enemy. And most people do not know that the reason these bellies are showing up on people all over the place, your body makes fat to store the toxins it can't get rid of. So it just puts them over here. But I can tell you this, you take this for 30 days and then lay off of it for 2 or 3 days, and you'll go, good grief, give me some more. Skin, nails, hair growing back. Cut yourself and it heals in half the time.
Hey, I want to welcome you all back. And remember, go to cdm.press. It's the primer for this show. If you want to understand the issues, you want to understand the news, you will be so far out in front of it, you will not even know what to do with all the information you're going to get there. So go to cdm.press, follow us there, and that is where you will find out what we're going to be doing on the show as well. I'm going to bring in Mark Mitchell right now. Mark, good morning. How are you?
Hi, doing great. What a time, man. Good
It
to
is.
be back talking with you. We had a great conversation last week, but so
Yeah,
much has
yeah.
changed.
Yeah.
Can't keep up with it all.
It's
It's daily.
shifting
It's
right
like a
under
fire
our feet,
hose,
right?
man.
What-
Yeah.
No, it's shifting right under our feet. You know, one of the things, and I thought about you when I saw this in the news feed last night. I thought Harvard Harris poll says 58% of voters are more satisfied with Trump's job as president than they were with Biden. And I thought, you know what? I think we could have tapped into some of this. And so I think it was a good time to get you in here, because while that's in the front, that's Harvard Harris, Rasmussen is even further out in front, and you guys are as well. I'd like to hear what your thoughts are on that.
Well, they're a really great pollster, and they do things a little bit differently than us. And so what we do is poll every night on a bunch of different issues, and we'll release stories that are based on like 2 or 3 questions here, 2 or 3 questions there, but then just hammer the same topics, week after week. They'll do a major poll where they do this topic deep dive, and there's a lot of incredible stuff in there. And I mean, I went through some of it last night on my show, but almost any way you ask these questions about Doge, the floor is like 60%. The ceiling is like 80 plus.
Yeah.
And so Americans just love what they're seeing. They just absolutely love it. And of course, I think the biggest problem is, listen, if we can't even keep up with everything, the normies are not getting this all. And so
Right.
what that kind of is with Harvard Harris is a vibe check, right? It's like, well, things are still good. But this is my major concern is in a month or two, I think Trump has earned his supporters. He's going to stay at about where he is now with a 50, 52%, somewhere in that range favorability. But at some point, there's a possibility that, the people plugged into the news just get away from the normies. And that in some ways might undermine this movement that's happening. And so that's a really big problem. I'm not at all sure how it gets solved, but I think it needs to.
Right.
Well, I think the key is just really good independent media going to get bigger and bigger, and that's selfishly that's what we're trying to do. So,
I heard. Yeah, I heard somebody else talking about this, and it's, some of it has to do also, Mark, with some of the deliverables, right? People, a normie like you were talking about, sees a $800, $1,000 dividend check shoot to them, and then all of a sudden, right, some of the deliverables start happening. I heard somebody commenting on that this morning, and I thought, that's probably like you said, because I kind of see the same thing. So much happening at once, boom, boom, one right after the other. I mean, it's rapid fire. It's drinking from a fire hose, and for us to be able to do that, as difficult as it is for us, the normie's not going to have it. But you throw some cash in a normie's in a mailbox with the check signed by DJT, what happens, right?
Yeah.
Some of that's realized. Is that correct?
No, I believe 100%. Maybe even peace with Russia or something like that. Maybe even some kind of deal in the Middle East. Those are absolutely deliverables as well. But I mean, we're just in a really weird spot. It's like hiring the best team of mechanics in the world to fix your car. Maybe your brakes are faulty or something. And when you walk into the garage and the carburetor's lying on the ground and the transmission's on a hoist, like it's
right.
You're gonna break into a cold sweat. You're gonna say like, what is going on? But the people who know are like, oh yeah, he's got to do that. There was this problem. And just in the last 24 hours, even like the intel agencies, like it's just mind blowing.
Yeah.
The gut check I'm seeing, I'm seeing plausible rumors from people I trust about like what influence may have been applied to Bill Barr to shut down election integrity investigations. And it's stuff that it's like, I wouldn't have taken that at face value just a month or 2 months ago. But now it's like, wow, I can't even believe that is where we're at.
Well, and this even goes even further as you're looking, because there's a guy, Michael Schellenberger. I follow him on Substack. He does a lot of good writing, and we've had some of his stuff here on the show as well. But he's come out and he's dropped another. I mean, he's saying the FBI employees are destroying evidence.
Yeah,
destroying evidence. I mean,
I saw somebody say generals are out there shredding stuff as well.
Shredding docs. Yeah, and
Yeah.
and you know what? I'm not too surprised. I mean, I would have probably expected that some of these people who are looking at some pretty large charges that could be coming down against them, criminality, that they're going to try to cover their tracks in some way if they were doing something that they weren't. So that's not, one of the things I was going to ask you about, though, going, as we look at some of these events and the polling that's coming out, I mean, Democrat approval in the Harris stuff is down to 36%. Now I look at that and I'm thinking, you know why? Because you are defending very unpopular positions right now. Am I right?
Yeah, and so we differ from them a little bit, and I can get into the wonky aspect of it, but everybody has their own independent data stream that's different, and they try and calibrate it to national top-line election results. But if somebody's entirely online, they might differ from me that's entirely online, but also uses like landline phone, because I'm getting more entrenched, more reliable voters that are older, and they have more opinionated views. And so what's kind of weird is a lot of those people are really plugged into like MSNBC and stuff. And so in my numbers, and it's impossible to say who's right, Democrats do better. Their favorability last time we asked the party was like 45, 46%, but only 23% very favorable. And Democrats like really like their party. Only I think it was in the low 40s maybe, or high 30s. Very favorable rating. And Joe Biden left in our numbers office with a 43%. When in Quinnipiac, who is wrong all the time on elections, but they'll have Biden at a 33. So it's really tough to say. There's enough fog of war that a lot of people, I think, in political circles will just like discount this kind of stuff. So I don't think the Democrat Party is probably getting a strong enough feedback loop to really gut check itself. And I like looking at them. I don't think they're going through that process. Yeah. And I think they're just going to be left behind, right? Like the 35, 40, 45% of America who's really committed to the Democrat Party is just going to shrink. And then you have people plugged into what's happening on the other side. And then you have this like football in the middle of normies. And it's really just going to come down to the psyop. Like how is it going to be chaos, or is it going to be happiness, zeal, and commitment to this reformation process? And that's the battle I think that's going to play out this year.
Yeah. And are you seeing anywhere in any of the polling? I'm not seeing anything right now where there's any efforts on the part of the Democrats or the deep state, if you will. It can be the Republicans, some of the Republicans as well. I'm not seeing anywhere where there's any come to Jesus moments there, where they're really looking at it now and saying, I mean, you look at things like we were talking about MSNBC, another 3 or 4 shows gone. They're not losing those shows because of market. They're losing those shows because they have no funding. The funding's going away, I think, with all of the government subsidies. But my point is, are we seeing anywhere where some of these voters on that side are starting to, have those moments?
Oh, 100%. The Democrat Party voters actually have a 25 to 30% approval of Trump, only 60% very strongly disapprove. So that's evidence point number one. But the fact that most of the components of his agenda are very popular, we just had a 62% approval rating today for Trump's mass deportation programs, and I'll try and pull up the Democrat numbers while I'm talking there. But we've measured in many ways the signal of a significant number of Democrats wanting the Democrat Party to cooperate with Trump. And so this is from first week in February. Is it better for the Democrat Party if Democrats oppose President Trump in every way possible, 36%, or try to work with him, 55%? So almost a 20-point margin there. And among Democrats, only 60% of Democrats want to oppose President Trump in every way possible. 30% say try to work with him. So it's like high, like that's the never Trump. Trump's a Hitler. Look at Elon's Nazi salute. That's high, but it's only 60% of the Democrat Party. So it's not the core. Whereas in the Republican Party, 80% of the Republican Party, it's like 75 to 80, is committed MAGA.
Yeah. Let me ask you, Mark. Obviously, the media and the propagandists have done a good job painting Trump, and a lot of people have swallowed that, that narrative. He's not going to be there forever, as Zelensky just said yesterday. What about JD Vance? What do people see of the future of MAGA? Because there's going to be an evolution, right? What do you think? Is he going to be successfully targeted as well?
JD, it's like too early for us to do matchups. And every time we do JD Vance favorability during the election season, it was like slightly less favorable than Trump. And so there's like maybe 2 or 3% that are like, no, the guy's too young, or he's the weird attacks. And that there was that kind of signal with Tim Walz as well. So it's like Harris was slightly less favorable than Trump, and Walz was slightly less favorable than JD Vance. But I mean, the CPAC straw poll tells you everything you want to know, right?
Yeah,
like that was incredible and mind blowing. And everybody's like, oh, DeSantis, this is his moment. It's like, no. Steve Bannon almost doubled DeSantis. Like, that's not a good sign for that guy. So, it looks like it's JD Vance to lose. No.
She's not going to be happy about that one at all, right? No, that's interesting. One of the things, you touch on this Doge, but we're seeing a whole litany of policies coming out of this, whether it's the stuff with I think one of the biggest things is the defunding of the deep state. I mean, you're not going to stop them until you just take their fuel away from them. And the fuel is all that money they were shoving out the door. But we're also seeing, the DEI stuff that you mentioned, the mass deportations and things like that. Can you go down and look at those policies and kind of give some direction on where those are?
So diversity, equity, and inclusion has actually been pretty well branded, because although individual components of it, like Americans are against hiring people based on race by strong majorities. But it's like, if you ask them, do you support or oppose DEI programs, you're going to get like 35-40% who support it, and a significant amount of Republicans, because they just don't understand what that means. They just don't understand it. Right. But it's like, once you strip away these words, again, like the mass deportations, we've asked this many ways. And like, these numbers are like, put them into catapults. Do you approve or disapprove of the Trump administration program to find and deport immigrants who are in the U.S. illegally? Very strong words. 41% strongly approve, 21% somewhat approve. So that's 62. Only 22% strongly disapprove. 42% of Democrats approve. So it's like, time and time again, and we have maybe some unreleased numbers I can tell you too. We talked about it last week, how it's polling on the FBI. And here's another one. Does the FBI need to be reformed? 52% yes, 31% no. 34% of Democrats say yes. With Republicans, it's 70-20. Independents, it's like 50-30. Like, these are big numbers. Because we're talking about 10 years ago, everybody would say, oh, we're like a 49-49 country. It's like, no, not on these things. Not on these things at all.
Yeah. Agree. One of the things, and I think you and I talked about this a little bit, Mark, was this, with regard to agencies like the FBI, for example, and the idea that I think what I read in the media is two things. I see accountability being a big word constantly used. Everybody wants to see action. I saw somebody wrote yesterday, we talked about it on the show. Bondi says, hey, I've got all these documents on the Epstein, and I've got them, I'm reviewing them, we're trying to figure out, and Todd and I mentioned this, said time for review's over, it's got to happen. I read a guy, he said yesterday, enough of that stuff, push it out, you got it, we know what's in it, give it to us and let us see it. That's the action, the deliverable, like we were talking about earlier. Same thing with the FBI. I think people go, oh, reform. Half the people think half that place ought to be gone. Not reformed, gone. You see Kash Patel. Kash Patel went in there talking about making it a museum, making the Hoover building a museum, shutting it down, taking it apart brick by brick. I mean, he was pretty hard. Dan Bongino now, he's gone in there as deputy director. What's he talking about? He talked about who needs to go to jail. He said it on his show all the time. People want to see action now. How does that correlate into what you're seeing in your polling?
Well, so this is what it comes down to. This is the calculus from the Harvard-Harris numbers. People say that Trump's strong leadership is like what we need. They said that many different ways in those numbers. And then they also say 52-31, the FBI needs to be reformed. We have other signals about other things. But Here's another question. Kash Patel wrote a book entitled Government Gangsters. How much of the time do you believe the federal government acts as government gangsters? And you get a much more muted signal. It's only 17% say all the time, 24% say most of the time. So you get 41%. That's the same 41% who think a civil war is likely in the next 3 years. Probably a strong overlap, probably a big Venn diagram overlap there. But only 22% say rarely or never. 28% say some of the time. So it's like 40% get it. 40% absolutely 100% get it. Those are the people that are like, oh, I see why you ripped the carburetor out. It's got to go. Like, we got to get a new one. Like, I don't know, right? And so somebody said, like, somebody made it. There was a rumor that going into the Super Bowl that Elon Musk was going to buy $40 million of ad placements and run 5 spots about the things that they're uncovering. And it turned out to be totally false. But I think it's an absolutely great idea. I think we need stuff like that. There should be more deliverables. Trump was flooding the zone. And what he did is he crowded out false narratives from the mainstream media, and it was effective. But it's like they got to keep going. There just needs to be more and more and more.
Most definitely does. Hey, we're going to go to a quick break. Can you stick around one more? I'd like to talk to you about tariffs, and I want to talk to you about the Middle East and Ukraine a little bit and get into some of that and what you're seeing there. Let's do that right after this short break.
It's News from the Edge. It's Output with John Ritchie and L. Todd Wood.
Through the pandemic, we can never be caught unprepared again. And so many Americans, when COVID hit, they had nothing in the house. Stores were shut down and doctors' offices were shut down. And even if doctors prescribed drugs, hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, pharmacists wouldn't fill the prescriptions. That was a nightmare.
Now the situation is much worse. We have these horrible supply chain problems. In our emergency medical kit at the Wellness Company, we have 8 prescription drugs that are all potentially life-saving.
Most people who died with COVID, they died in the hospital because they didn't receive early treatment.
Every American family should have one of these.
I can tell you the Wellness Company kit is the answer.
I'm David Cross, and you may know me from my election integrity work, but I also own U.S. Asset Management, a family-owned and operated investment advisory practice. I'm a certified portfolio manager, and my job is to help you make better decisions with your money. One of the things we try to avoid is investing in companies that push the woke agenda. If you're invested with one of the big firms out there, there's a pretty good chance that you're feeding the beast that hates your values. Our company is 100% conservative, and we'd love to have an opportunity to work with you. Check us out at us-am.com and look for our big, proud American Eagle logo.
I want to just welcome everybody back. Remember, we are on Spotify, we're on Amazon Music, and we are on Apple as well, Apple Podcasts. Make sure you get it if you're interested in on-demand audio-only products. There's the place to go, and we're now being carried on YouTube. We're streaming live there, so get a chance. Make sure you get back. We're back there after how long? 5 years? Todd?
Yeah, 5 years, and the traffic or the subscribers are growing. So thank you for that, and please keep that going.
Yeah, and most definitely. So we've got Mark Mitchell. He's joining. He's been with us. We're talking all things polls, all things the sentiment of the electorate, as they would say. That's what we're trying to gauge a little bit and inform everybody about that. One of the things that I was kind of interested in hearing about is how, we've had all these endless wars, as Trump's campaign called them, and what was going on in Ukraine. He's putting that to bed, it looks like. What's going on out in Gaza and in the Middle East there. What are some of the sentiments you're finding there in your polling, Mark?
Middle East is a tough one because I think there's a lot of confusion about specifically what's happening there. And I'll just say, like, overwhelmingly, voters do back Israel compared to Palestine. And there's the same kind of sentiment in Ukraine. It's like there is a lot of the mainstream media, like, headlines do sink in. Like, Putin vilification did work for most people. But Ukraine they see as a complete stalemate. Very few people think Ukraine's winning that. I think the last time we tested it, it might have been like 15% think Russia's winning and 13% think Ukraine's winning. Right. Over 50% say it's a stalemate. In the Middle East, looking at the history of Israel and Palestine, do you sympathize more with the Israelis or Palestinians? 49% say Israel, 20% say Palestine, but 30% say not sure. Mm-hmm. And then like we polled on the murder of hostages. We polled on who is a stronger supporter of Israel, Harris or Trump. 48% say Trump, 25% say Harris. But on both of these things, it's really hard to just generalize, like, what do the Americans want? We even asked, like, are we doing too much or too little to help Ukraine? And the too much signal is only in the 40s. And the only people that say by a majority is Republicans. And it was still, I think, I don't know, 50 or 60. So just directionally, it's like one of those things where the voters have no freaking clue, but ultimately it comes back to they picked Donald Trump. And right now he's on pretty much every issue we ask. He's getting rated excellent or good to between 48, 50%. Foreign policy and then trade issues as well. 38% excellent or 34% excellent, 14%
let me jump in there, Mark. Yeah. On Ukraine, there's obviously a big narrative now, which I see with Bolton and a lot of people actually saying and pushing the Trump is working for Putin narrative, and that he's surrendering to Russia, all of that. Is that working?
Well, what I can say, we haven't polled on Ukraine at all since Trump's been in office. I'll tell you what. And what it is that's the entire unified message of the fake neocon conservative movement that had a conference last week, and a lot fewer people attended. But we asked. So here's the thing: in January, right before the inauguration, we asked about Ukraine. This was the last time we asked. How do you rate the job that President Joe Biden has done in regards to the war with Ukraine and Russia? And you can say, all right, well, this is a very like pro-funding Ukraine to do whatever the hell it wants, demonize Putin and draw a line. I can try and pull up too. Let me try and pull this up in the background. We asked about, should we keep fighting until all of the territory is won back, or should they have peace talks? Let me try and get that. But on Joe Biden, on the issue of Ukraine, 14% excellent, 19% good. So that's 33. That's pretty low. And he started in the low 40s on national security issues when Ukraine was first invaded. 44% say Joe Biden was doing a poor job. And then we also asked, this is the last time we asked, only 18% say Russia's winning. Only 13% say Ukraine's winning. 51% say it's a stalemate. And will President-elect Trump's policy towards the war between Russia and Ukraine be better or worse than Biden's policy? 43% say better, 37% say worse. So that's, what is that? 6-point margin. Net plus 6 when Trump won by a lot smaller margin. Mm-hmm. So 11% say about the same. And, 72 to 12 among Republicans. So it's like this thing where it's like, how do you even measure like what people want? Mm-hmm. They more than the election. So that's good. And I guess we'll like try and get in there, but this whole damn thing could be over next week. Who knows?
Yeah, you're exactly right. It sounds like to me that a lot of the polling that we're seeing in a lot of the, like you said, the normies, it's a lot for a normie to keep up with on everyday life for them to see and be able to follow. But it sounds like a lot of them look at what's going on and go, I'm going along with what Trump does. I may not know everything about what's happening with Doge, but all I see is, he's cleaning out some of the fraud. And, it sounds like to me that's what he's getting the benefit of right now. Am I right?
Yeah, 100%. It's just so different than it was. Like, think back to, like Obama versus Romney. It's like, oh, do you want Romney's tax cuts and government spending cuts, or do you want Obama's like big government programs. And it's like literally it was like binary issues that everybody really kind of understood. There wasn't any like finesse or nuance. We didn't really have any major like foreign policy. Like it just was different. It was more simple. And now it's so overwhelming. And it's because everything's freaking accelerating. Like there's a lot of acceleration happening week by week.
Is the legacy media losing any power? It sounds like you're saying they're really not. From a
let me see if we pulled on media since the election. So in September, we did a 10-state battleground set of 10,000 people, and we had numbers that were: who do you trust more for your political news? Major cable news channels, network TV, or independent online sources? And major cable TV news was still 27%, network news 24%, independent online sources 31%, some other 9%, but then like 9% like aren't even sure. Like, I don't know. I don't listen to news. So you got 51% of America as of September. The battlegrounds are going to be pretty close to all of the nation. 51% are still watching the Idiot Box.
Yeah.
And it's like a lot. It's 55% of Democrats, 40% of independents. And like the good news here is that it's lower among 18 to 39-year-olds, but the 65 and older who are getting more and more left, 65% of them watch cable TV news and network TV news. So those people,
why are they going left? Is it because of the media? What do you think?
Oh, 100%. Like we really explored this topic a lot. Let me go up to the top of this crosstab. It's really incredible. This is just like, again, this needs like deep study by psychologists or political scientists. But we, normally everybody asks the issue question. Here's a list: violent crime, border security, economy, climate change, blah, blah, blah. Right. And always the economy wins. And so we got tired of just measuring it that way. And we put a different issue question in where we asked just for the top two of the right and the left. And for this election, that was abortion, illegal immigration, rising prices, and protecting our democracy, whatever the hell that means.
Bureaucracy.
And if you look at MSNBC viewers, 75% of them said protecting our democracy or abortion. And if you look at Fox News or Newsmax, it was like 80% said illegal immigration and rising prices. So it's two totally different Americas. Totally different Americas. And when you have like, the 65 and olders who want those entitlement spendings and who think that Trump isn't presidential, and they're sitting at home watching MSNBC, CNN, or freaking remembering the days of Walter Cronkite, they're going to have neoconservative foreign policy positions. They're going to be upset when you see an institution like the FBI gutted. And that's where we're at. And it's the 18 to 39-year-olds all of a sudden who have a higher approval rating of Trump and are more optimistic about where this term is because they're plugged into online sources. It really is two different Americas.
Yeah, having had young people in my household and around me for quite some time, they don't sit and listen to that big flat screen on your wall. They listen. They'll sit in front of it, but have their phone on and watch it on their phones. So they're definitely more inclined to look at the streamers and the alternative news than they are, which is good for us. That's the future. But in the same sense, like you're saying, the only way you get that mainstream media, that legacy media out from in front of the older voters, the older generations of voters, is going to be exactly what Trump's doing. It's choking it off and taking it down piece by piece, as you're seeing at MSNBC and CNN, even with Jim Acosta. He's gone now. All the radical stuff. That's really what's got to happen, but certainly melds with what you're seeing. I think the dynamic of the viewership and what we're seeing out there. But good stuff. Mark, how do people follow what you're doing in your polling and get involved with you and what you're doing there? RasmussenReports.com. People can sign up for a free email update and support us by being a reader subscriber, or you could support us on Rasmus_poll at Twitter as well. And I would give you my personal Twitter, but I just changed it from my name to Honest Pollster, so people can find me. There we go. There. Honest Pollster. Now I've got to go make sure I'm following you on there.
No, it'll flip over, but it's funny that it was available still. That's what's
still there. Well, gee, you got a good one now. That's great. Mark, certainly enjoy having you on. Look forward to having you on again. I'd like to. I was telling Todd, I think we need to do something regularly with you and make sure we get you out here and push your work. I think your work's good stuff. So certainly appreciate having you on. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Mark.
All right, take care.
It's News from the Edge. It's Output with John Ritchie and L. Todd Wood.
Well, in the case of hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, these are two medications that have been FDA approved for use in humans for decades. They are very, very inexpensive. Interestingly, available over the counter in almost every other country other than the US and Canada. You can just walk into a pharmacy and buy them like we buy Tylenol in much of the world because they're that safe. And we've known for decades that ivermectin has very strong antiviral properties. It has anti-inflammatory properties, and both ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine are what we call zinc ionophores. They help to move zinc from the bloodstream into the cell, which is where it needs to be in order to fight off a virus. So lots of application for these, and we have every reason to believe that those drugs also will likely have some efficacy against H5N1 or a number of other respiratory viruses that we may meet down the road.
Our world is changing rapidly. Many crucial systems we depend upon are collapsing. And the most important system that is failing is the food supply.
Mr. President, this Council is more than aware of the multiple challenges and threats the world is facing today. But the threat of famine, people starving slowly to death, must be a red line.
These food prices are going to keep going up, and they're going to keep feeding excuse after excuse, narrative after narrative.
Yeah.
You're going to have to get off that treadmill and start getting more autonomous with your own food growing.
You want to make sure that you can eat, because frankly, food is the biggest issue as we are going through these transitions.
But amidst the chaos, there is a path to resilience. Marjorie Wildcraft is the female leader of the survival and preparedness movement. Marjorie has taught millions of people how to grow an abundance of food in a grid-down situation, even if you have no experience, are older, or out of shape.
I've spent decades finding the fastest, easiest, and funnest ways for the average person to be able to grow a lot of food. I've created a step-by-step process that's so simple that even kids to elders have been using it in order to grow a lot of their own food. And you can too, even if you have no experience, you're older, or you're out of shape.
Growing your own food is like printing your own money. Get started today.
Back with you. I'm not sure if John is frozen or not, guys. We're going to run another break here. Let me check with him and see if he's frozen. Hold on 1 second.
Hey, are you there?
Yeah, are you frozen?
I think we froze up there for a minute, but we're back. Sorry about that. A little tech. The gremlins are sometimes jump in our machines. So welcome back, everybody. Glad we got it back on here. That's a good thing. One of the things I was going to ask you, have you seen anything about this BBC documentary on Gaza? Did you see this thing where they're finding out now they ended up having to pull it because I guess the star, this kid that was the victim of this whole documentary, they found out now he's the son of the Hamas minister, and the whole thing was kind of contrived. Have you heard anything about this?
No, I haven't. You know, my sense is that the USAID and the Matrix was just funding both sides of the whole thing. I mean, you know, just
Yeah, I
trying to
agree.
create conflict and make money and whatever the end agenda is. So
Yeah.
I have no doubt that BBC. I mean, we have a lawsuit against BBC, so you know, I have no doubt that what they're doing.
Yeah, they came in, they wanted to put, I guess this was a Gaza, this documentary they had put together, How to Survive in a War Zone, and had this little boy in here, and he was kind of the star of this quote unquote documentary. And they had it on here, and now come to find out that this whole thing was contrived, that they found out that the kid was the son of one of the Hamas ministers. So interesting how there's this continual attempt to try to bring bring this about, this this kind of a narrative. But I agree with you. I think, and again, going back to not just that and what you said about this USAID, I think it's important for people to see what's happening with media right now, and especially all these outlets that were being funded through our tax dollars. We're now finding out it was nothing but bought propaganda, purchased propaganda. And MSNBC is a prime example. Again, like I said yesterday, I heard somebody comment and say it's the market now that's going to affect them, and I'm saying this isn't the market. This is the gravy train that got cut off when USAID was cut off.
Well, that's
These
so
people
true.
were living off that stuff.
Just to be clear, our position on the Middle East is we don't want war. We want to tell the truth. We're going to tell the truth on both sides. We try to tell it as clean and as honest as we can tell from our sources. We have a lot of good sources in Israel. We just want the truth out there of what's happening so people can make their own decisions. And that's what colors our reporting in the Middle East.
Yeah, no, I agree. And just the one thing that I think we want to make sure that we're seeing is just the fact that like I said, a lot of what's been coming out in these, especially in this globalist environment of media narrative, we're even seeing it today. We talked about what's going on. This stuff going on in Scotland with these migrant camps, 300 of them across Scotland. Scotland's not that big.
So that was one, and there's 300 of
that
those?
was one, and you saw the size of it. It was as big as that. In the frame as it lifts up, you see the village, the old houses, and the village right behind it. And when you look back there, and now you've got all these like cookie cutter looking cubicle like houses that they're going to put all these migrants in, and the space is as big as that village. I mean, and they're going to put 300.
It's global corporate fascism. That's what we're facing.
That's it.
And global power that we have to fight. We have to expose that.
We're going to do more on Scotland and what's going on over there for sure. We were doing some video on that right before just last week. We were doing some video on that. And I'm gonna have that video pulled up again. I see some people have joined us since the first hour, so we'll get into that later on in the second hour. By the way, we have Rob Maness is going to be joining us at 11:15, right? And we're going to get into this shift, that what's going on in the Pentagon right now with Hegseth and the firing. CQ Brown's gone now. In fact, they went through and cleared them all out.
Yeah.
And we've got
not all of them, but we're going to talk about that.
Right. Well, when I say all, I mean a lot of the Joint Chiefs.
We've reported on a lot of this. A lot of the generals on AFP, our armed forces.
Yeah, you can see that on there as well. There's a lot of reporting on the shift to leadership there, as well as at the academies. And what's interesting is bringing in Raising Cain. Trump's talked about him now for 4 years, told the story about meeting him and bringing him in and having him help clear out the ISIS threat that was the caliphate that was going on in the Middle East there. So it was always kind of an interesting story. But now we got him coming in and as part of the Joint Chiefs, which is interesting. I saw Hegseth got into it with one of the folks in the media because they tried to say that he asked Hedges about bringing in an unqualified, I think his name's Dan Kane, something General Dan Kane. And Hedges
Brought him
said,
out of retirement, actually.
yeah. And Hedges looked at him and went, I'm not even going to address that unqualified question. I mean, he just called him out right there in front of everybody, which was, I think that's what's got to happen. You got to show those narratives aren't going to be able to stick around. And I mean, this is a guy, this general, he's not to say he's unqualified, but you look
He's
at
the guy who defeated ISIS. So,
yeah,
I think he's pretty damn qualified.
Yeah. And
speaking of that, let me jump in real quick. Obviously, there's a lot of uncertainty in the world right now. Go to the wellness company, get your emergency medical kits. This is the contagion kit. You got to be prepared. We don't know what's coming. We got 300 migrant camps in Scotland. We got, dirty bombs. We've got bird flu still. Be prepared for your family. Go to twc.health, promo code CDM, and get your 10% off. But twc.health/CDM. Thank you.
Yeah. After, and again, like you said, I mean, this mass migration that's been going on, what we're seeing here in the U.S.
There's a whole tuberculosis scare now.
Yeah. I read about this now. Now they think TB, something we put down years ago, is starting to recirculate. I know, when I went to places like China and other, they made me get TB shots. I had to be checked for TB. Because it's still pretty prevalent in a lot of other third world countries. So, what's going to happen when you start moving populations around out of these third world countries that do have TB? You're going to start spreading it, right? You're going to see it start reoccurring. So definitely that's a good point. Definitely make sure you go to TWC and get the wellness company. Great packages, what they've got there. You can get it tailored to your needs. That's what they've really done a good job of putting that together. So definitely go there. We're going to go to a quick break. And then when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about this whole thing that's going on with the UK now. They're coming out and saying, we've got to have sweeping sanctions. We got to put troops out there. We got to prepare for the decoupling of the European security situation from the U.S., which is kind of interesting to me. I'm not totally against that. So let's see what they're doing, and we'll check that out right after the break.
It's News from the Edge. It's Output with John Ritchie and L. Todd Wood.
If you haven't noticed, gold has reached a new high, all-time highs actually, and keeps going up every day. Why is that? It's because precious metals are a long-time historical store of value. And if you own a portfolio and you have assets in the fiat currencies, i.e. stocks, bonds, cash, or whatever, you're vulnerable to hyperinflation, which is coming as our debt explodes another trillion every 90 days. It's really scary. So how do you protect yourself? Go to Advisor Metals. If you look on any of our cdm.press sites, about halfway down, there's an ad for Advisor Metals. Click on it, fill out the form for your contact info, and Ira Bishotsky will contact you and talk to you. It's an easy conversation. There's no sales pitch. He's completely verified by us. He has a regulatory background we've checked into. We've checked with his bankers. We've checked with his IRA custodians for metals, and we can highly recommend Advisor Metals and IRA. So go to Advisor Metals. If you call them directly, tell them we sent you at CDM, and he'll definitely take care of you. But protect your portfolio because you really need to. It's coming. Thank you.
My friends gain more and more weight, and then eventually I got to tell you, this is a little dark, but bad diet literally killed my whole crew.
Wow.
Diabetes, a stroke, I mean, all kinds of stuff. It's like, you had a stroke, you're not even 50 years old. You guys got to quit eating this stuff. Your body knows what's what. You're not conscious of this, but that's why people will go to the refrigerator and they'll grab this and that and the other and put together this outrageously elaborate combination of foods. Your body's trying to reach balance. Unbeknownst to us, our bodies are always trying to reach homeostasis. You can't eat all of this stuff and expect to live a long time. And one thing led to another, and I went, forget this. We're going to make our own product. So we partnered with one of the world's top 3 biochemist where nutrition specific study is concerned. I said, all I want is the best nutritional and immune support product in the world. So we mix it in yogurt. It's a powder. I got a bag of it here. I keep one on the console all the time, just so I can show people.
Yeah.
And it's a powder. Now, this is not candy. This is hardcore nutrition, and sugar is an enemy. And most people do not know that the reason these bellies are showing up on people all over the place, your body makes fat to store the toxins it can't get rid of. So it just puts them over here. But I can tell you this, you take this for 30 days and then lay off of it for 2 or 3 days, and you'll go, good grief, give me some more. Skin, nails, hair growing back. Cut yourself and it heals in half the time.
John, I got my Nucleo.
You all ready?
Got them in the mail. I've been trying to recover after our week 10-day trip, and I can tell you it really helps. If you want to make sure you got all the building blocks you need to get through this day everybody's working really hard, go to cdmnutrition.com. I do think you'll have a positive experience because I have.
Yeah, it's good. And I would say anytime you put those kind of nutrients into your body, good things can happen. I mean, whether it's, your energy levels or your ability to, fight off viruses, colds, things like that. I mean, these things are going to help, probably help you one way or another. But I know I've used it. I've been using it for a year now. It's been really good. So good stuff, Nucleo Boost. So definitely do that. John and Brendy have done a good job on that. One of the things I was going to ask you about is this whole election in Germany that we talked about a little bit yesterday. But between that and then what you're seeing in Romania and I did see where I guess Georgescu, I think's his name, Kalin Georgescu. He is the nationalist that that they're trying to prevent from getting into from taking over the presidency there in Romania. The courts have shut down that election, from what I understand. But now they're saying the media always likes the legacy media always likes to refer to them as right wingers and extreme right wingers, things like that, because they put their country first and they're nationalists. So that's the game. But one of the things they're saying is that thousands of people have rallied. Bucharest is going pretty crazy, and his support is getting even stronger. It's getting stronger. This Kalin Georgescu's is because of the way they're doing it. It's kind of like what we saw here with Trump when Trump started getting all the warfare and everything going against him, and they started doing all the stuff, the assassination attempt, all this stuff happening to Trump, and his support grew. People from the left came over, people from the Democrats, and you're starting to see this now, this same kind of reaction with people in Romania. And I think this reporting's coming out as of now that what's happened in Germany with the Conservative Party there, the AfD there, they gained tons of seats. And I think the people in Germany as well are mad because they won, but they still lose. They win, but all the deep staters there put together their little coalition to try to keep the majority of the people, the candidate that got, that got the majority, the party that got the majority of the votes, still try to silence them and keep them out.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt that the EU project is now exposed as a global fascist entity trying to install globalist tyranny across the continent. That's just completely obvious. And they only say democracy when it means, that you're coming after their power structure. So
right.
It's all a lie. They're exposed. Trump's exposed them. He said Schultz wouldn't be prime minister long. So we'll see if that happens. But the European people, just like in Romania, got to stand up. The UK has to have the will to survive. Same with the French. Same with the Germans. If you don't have the will to survive, you won't. That's very simple.
Yeah, and I think they're talking a lot about this because what they're calling for now is they're saying they want this current government to step down in Romania. They're saying you've done enough, enough's enough. You already know who won the election. He won resoundingly. It's time to let him assume the
which would
the
be
role.
a massive blow to their game plan.
Yeah, yeah.
We need to see dominoes coming down, just like in the Soviet Union.
Yeah,
it's just from the other side of the fence is what needs to happen.
You know, what's interesting is also what you see in Germany, because there was a German reporter, or it was somebody that was a talking head on one of the news shows that was talking about this. And what does he say? He says, look, the AfD, think about this for a minute. The AfD has managed to put enough support together to be legitimized as a party, as opposed to if they had not, the state would come after them and arrest them for disinformation and for misinformation, and the warfare or the lawfare that would have gone against them just because they didn't get enough of the election. So you can't go out and run and lose under a certain margin without them exacting some kind of legal revenge on you. Think about that for a minute.
Yeah.
So you either need to get enough support to put you over the top, or they can come after you. They can raid your offices. They can say what you were doing was unlawful because all you were trying to do was just trying to overthrow democracy. To me, that's just crazy.
Well, one thing, going back to this relates to Pam Bondi and not releasing the Epstein and JFK files, RFK or JFK.
Right.
I mean, that has to be done. And I haven't seen anything from her on elections, and I haven't seen anything from her on going after Democratic criminals. Yeah. Maybe she's got it in the works. I hope she does. But I mean, it's not we've seen a lot on other things, and Elon's moving, but what has she done? She's sued a couple cities for sanctuary city status.
Yeah.
There hasn't been a mass. I feel like who was the guy that Trump put in first last time? The senator.
Oh, Bill Barr. No. Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
I'm having that same vibe, right? Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but it's like more protecting than actually doing what.
Yeah, and that's where I agreed with the guy yesterday about the release of all these documents and everything. If they're sitting on your desk, put them out. They've been reviewed. We've already reviewed and reviewed and reviewed and reviewed. Time to put them out
for years. What needs to be reviewed?
Yeah. There's no more. Now it's just dragging your feet because there's stuff in there, I'm sure, that's going to be controversial, stuff that they don't want the people to get all riled up about.
Or they're putting stuff to ground, right? I mean, they're redacting or altering, or who knows? I mean, but when you have delays like this, it creates all kind of conspiracy theories because it's a conspiracy. Something's going on.
Yeah, you've got some kind of collusion. And what you said about the elections also, because we've got so much coming up now in this year. End of the year, we start a whole new campaign season like we've talked about before. And you got the 2026 elections coming up. And President Donald Trump has to know that if they can steal 3 or 4 more congressional seats out there, he's going to get bogged down. They're going to do the same thing they did to him last time.
Here's a perfect example. We put out a story 2 days ago on Tom Cotton was busted, massive smurfing coming into his campaign. That's criminal money laundering.
Yep.
By our team, Chris Gleason and Peter Bernegger, who he was working with. So have you seen anything from DOJ? A senator massively laundering money into his campaign, proven beyond a shadow of a doubt.
Well, and the fact that, we've talked about this with Chris Gleason as well. And the fact that you have apps out there doing this, and they could never do it. When I worked at JP Morgan, we could never have allowed an app to run credit cards multiple times without the little 3-digit security codes, without all the proper KYC and all the proper controls on that transaction. We'd lock that app down, for that user right there, and they would have had to call in and cleared that up with their credit card company. And with that, they'd have never been able to do it. And so for the fact that this was able to be done, at the mass scale, the mass level we're talking about, and these cards being run the way they were,
Obviously,
with
obviously,
the banks had to be in on it. They had to allow it. I know. I worked in that area. I can tell you, we would have never been able to allow that to occur. We have too many pieces in place, control pieces, whether it's technology, it's AI, it's bots, whatever. You got too much out there. It would have shut that down. It shuts this stuff down accidentally.
Well, maybe we should put like a running clock, like a debt clock in the top of our screen on the show. Days since Pam Bondi has had the JFK files, or days since nobody's done anything about Tom Cotton.
Or days nobody's done anything about election fraud in this country. I mean, these are, because this is really, and again, the election thing bugs me. Maricopa County came out yesterday. They've got an investigation on Hobbs for almost $400 million. They're saying was misappropriated. I mean, where's the DOJ coming on? You can't do that. These are elections.
You would have thought since after the 2020 election, the first thing Donald Trump would have done, and maybe it's coming, would have come in with attorneys and law enforcement into Maricopa County.
Yeah.
I mean,
and the thing, one of the things that I would say is this, and look, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. It's been a little over a month.
Maybe they got to get the FBI under control, and then they can do this,
and we just got Cash and Bongino in there, and I get it. So we'll see what happens there. We're going to go to a quick break, and when we get back, we have Rob Maness. He's going to join us here at the quarter hour, and we're going to talk what's going on in the Pentagon, what's going on with the shuffling of the deck chairs and the leadership there. Very important, and how that's playing out. So looking forward to having him on. We'll do that right after this short break.
It's News from the Edge. It's Output with John Ritchie and L. Todd Wood.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work. Try to see a doctor this week, or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet, and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor, and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Order online fast and save $45. Your kit with prescriptions to treat common and life-saving illnesses is rushed to your door. Visit twc.health/CDM, promo code CDM. That's twc.health/CDM, promo code CDM.
This is a special report.
Knowing how to invest your money is harder than ever before. Dealing with stock market volatility, record debt, and terrorist attacks requires new thinking. At U.S. Asset Management, we can help you see the world more clearly so that you can move beyond the chaos and invest with confidence. Call us, visit us online, or drop by our office. U.S. Asset Management, helping you make better decisions with your money.
Hey, I just wanted to say, welcome back, everybody. I just wanted to say, remember, one of our assets on CDM.press is our Armed Forces Press. Very good place to get if you follow military and what's going on in the military and what's going on, developments, news out of the Pentagon. You've got some great feeds there. They're coming in from some great, very well qualified and good reporters in the field out there. So definitely go check that out. And on that note, I'm going to go ahead and bring in Rob Maness. Rob, how's it going?
Good morning, John. How are you?
Hey, good to see you. Good to see you. You know, we're excited to get you on here because we've been really talking this whole what we're seeing going on in the Pentagon, and now you got Raising Cane coming back. You got some familiar names, but finally seeing some of the movement that we initially thought, you know, it's taking a little long to happen with some of the firings when Hedges went in, but we're seeing it now. What are your thoughts on what's going on there?
Well, as expected, as far as the WHO so far, you know, he was going after the woke generals. The most woke of the woke is General CQ Brown. And look, none of this is personal. Todd knows CQ. I know CQ. Many of my colleagues in the B1 weapons officer community work directly with him and for him. I've met him. I've worked with him at Red Flag. I was junior to him, but still, I mean, he did a fine job. That's why he got to where he was at. But when George Floyd happened, the man lost his ever-loving mind, and he imprinted racial and gender discrimination onto first the United States Air Force, and he left the United States Air Force as chief of staff with the lowest readiness ratings of the Air Force ever by the Heritage Foundation report that comes out. You know, I'll be honest, I had an opportunity to see Senator Roger Wicker here face to face for just a moment before the committee voted him out of committee. And I told Senator Wicker, I said, sir, he signed a memo with the Secretary of the Air Force, Frank Kendall, who's another bad actor that needs to be prosecuted, by the way, that said that there were too many white male pilots in the Air Force, and laid out percentage demographic goals in that memo. You cannot argue with that. That is a discriminatory policy memo. Now they tried to twist it and legalize it and all that and say, no, it's not a policy memo. Yes. When the chief of staff of the Air Force and the secretary of the Air Force and the chief of space operations, John Raymond, by the way, and the undersecretary of the Air Force, who under this current structure is really the secretary of the Space Force, when those four individuals' names are on a memo that says we have too many white male pilots and here's the demographics and percentage of those demographics we want you to do, you have departed the selection based on merit, and you've gone to the destination of equity, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And CQ Brown should never have been approved to become chairman of the Joint Chiefs. And quite frankly, we should hold Republicans accountable for that too. Roger Wicker is now the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee. And he's my senator. He's a nice guy. He's an Air Force officer too. He's a JAG, I think. You know, I'm not saying this is not personal. This is professional. And men and women that have positions of power like Mr. Wicker have to step up and stop this stuff, or it's left to us. And the us is groups like STARS.
Well, we pushed hard on that, and let me just throw that up. We pushed hard against CQ Brown, and he was put in anyway. I have a question for you, Colonel. You know, I'm not going to name names, but one of my old colleagues was fired in the latest round, and I look back and I struggle with the personal decisions these guys made into pushing DEI, pushing Marxism, pushing the vaccines. They obviously made a conscious decision. So do you have any insight? You're more connected to the force than I am on the decision-making process these guys went through to literally, I mean, essentially betray their country as a uniformed military officer. I mean, what do you think? What got them there?
Well, I'll name names. Look, part of the problem that we in the Air Force retiree community is an unwillingness to name names. The guy's name is General Jim Slipe. He was the Assistant Vice Chief of Staff of the United States Air Force. And the reason he was fired, I believe, is because he was going to be the Chief of Staff of the Air Force. And he's the most wokest general and DEI general and vaccine mandate general in the U.S. Air Force. And this comes from where? It doesn't come from me. It comes from the people that I've been working with for several years now. You've probably interviewed Rob Green, Commander Rob Green.
Yes.
You do U.S. Navy.
I was with him at Mar-a-Lago a few days ago.
Yeah, he exactly. He wrote the Declaration of Military Accountability, of which I was one of the few 06s that actually signed it. We couldn't get a general to sign it. That's why I named Life's name, because this is my request to the generals retiree community. You guys got to step up and name names, or the right things aren't going to get done as we proceed down this process road. So the folks that I've talked to are Rob Green, Casey Dixon, who was a JAG in AFSOC under the COVID vaccine mandate. And those kind of folks that have had direct access to Slife's lack of leadership as a general officer and as a colonel, and have seen it firsthand. And they cannot say enough bad about this man's decision making and lack of leadership. And it's amazing because I sat next to him as a major throughout Air Command and Staff College for 6 months of it. And I never picked up on any of this kind of stuff. The guy was smart, bright, energetic. He was ambitious, but what major at Air Command and Staff College isn't ambitious, you know?
Yeah.
So I didn't pick up on any of this stuff. But if you go look at Sam Shoemate's X account, he's the guy that was asked to put together the list to give to Secretary Hegseth's team to consider for removal as far as officers go. And he said, if I go and look at my DMs on X, he just said this the other day, he said the name that comes up every single time, not once or twice, but every single time, is General Jim Slife. That's coming from people that have worked for him and worked with him, that know him well, especially from the subordinate level today. And quite honestly, they were shocked that he was made the A-Vice, but they were shocked that he made 4-star general. So we got to name names. Todd. I'm not picking on you, but
I
have to get the generals to name.
I have some personal relationships there. That's why
we have to get the generals to name names, is what I'm saying, because they don't want to do it.
You know, Rob, one of the things, and you mentioned also the confirmation and our civilian leadership that is behind some of these people being put into these positions. Same thing needs to happen there. I mean, the kind of guff they threw out there, the kind of stuff they threw at Hegseth and what they've approved, especially even on our side. I look at Democrats and I'm just like, they're leftists. They're going to do what they do. But I look at these people on our side that you talk about, and I look at this and I'm going, you had no problem with Lloyd Austin. You had no problem with a guy wearing a wig going in as your HHS leadership. But you're giving Pete Hegseth the kind of nonsense you're putting out there. And these people, I think that's same thing. We've got to be able to say, you know what, this isn't right what you're doing there. And we look at Collins in Maine and some of these other, what's her name up in Alaska. And it makes your head explode to even think about it.
Lisa Murkowski.
Murkowski. That's her.
Rob, do you think
who's never won a legitimate election?
Hasn't won a one. She got kicked out of the Republican Party, ran independent, got ranked choiced in, and just ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Rob, do you think they just made a career choice? I mean, and just said, I want to make rank, so I'm going to do this. I mean, is that the main driver? Just power and money, essentially?
Well, if you could look over the last 5 years, especially from the beginning of the pandemic section and forward, and take a look at, let's talk Air Force for a second. That's the one we both know the best. And take a look at the players there. CQ Brown, when George Floyd hits, is the PACAF commander, I believe. So he's a 3-star. Gets promoted to 4-star and elevated up to chief of staff of the Air Force after the George Floyd thing. And you remember the coaches or something made this weird video that started the STARS organization at the Air Force Academy.
Yeah, the football coach.
Yeah, exactly. The football coach did this weird video that's kind of glommed onto what CQ was talking about in his video. You got to go check out his PACAF commander video after George Floyd.
So it was prepared.
Really,
it was planned.
It's really, really bad. So, so he's elevated to the senior military officer in the Air Force. And every one of these people, Slife, General Short, I believe her name is, that was the senior military advisor to Hegseth, Rich Clark, our peer.
My classmate.
That's my commissioning year too, even though I'm an OTS grad. I mean, I consider us all, we're the same year group. So, and I flew with him in B1s. Really nice guy, very nice guy, good family. I mean, these people are people
that's what I
quite often that we love, but not only professionally, but as friends and colleagues, good friends, but they all took the medicine that CQ was giving and they swallowed it, hook, line, and sinker. And I think the
Almost
biggest
like 30
example,
pieces of silver, I mean,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
it's really
yeah.
very
That,
similar.
that's what they were doing. And when you talk to the COVID vaccine mandate folks that I've worked with and interviewed, and so have you, like Rob Green and Casey Dixon, Carolyn Rocco, those kind of folks, and you listen to them, it was across the services, just to branch it out to the rest of the services. The CNO that was fired, Franchetti, she was just woke as woke, but also an advocate of reducing military discipline, saying it's okay to have your hands in your pockets. And that sounds like a nit. I know, I was enlisted too, but it's about a military discipline issue. It's not about being able to put your hands in the pockets. That rule is one of the rules that sets the U.S. military apart from a gang.
Right.
When our enemies are looking at the men and women in the U.S. Armed Forces, if they're a bunch of slouches and they don't know when to dress up in a suit and tie, and they don't know when to present themselves as combatants in a combat zone, and they look like a bunch of slouches, nobody's going to be afraid of us, and that's all about deterrence. So I mean, these people across the board made decisions to link up with DEI, to link up with the COVID vaccine mandate, which turned out to be an unlawful order in its implementation. At a minimum, was an unlawful order, and they chose. They made. I think. Well, I know they did. They did. They made conscious decisions to do it, to continue to make rank and seek more responsibility. And of course, the in-state goal that a lot of people get accused of is to get that corporate board job or several of them to live
And
the
he
rest
got
of
it.
their
Rich
lives in
Clark,
luxury.
Rich Clark was successful. I mean, I confronted him pretty heavily on this whole, especially the vax issue and the DEI at the academy. There's also General Williams at West Point who went on and put on another star, I think. He's over in Africa or something. But I just put up the honoring at Mar-a-Lago of the military whistleblowers. The guys you're talking, Matt Lohmeyer, Rob Green, Stu Scheller, all those, it was, check this video out on AFP. But anyway.
Yeah. They definitely, and you referred to those little things, the hands in the pot, all these little, it's just incrementalism that they were using. It was just chipping away a little piece at a time to remove standards, to lower standards, to make it where, pretty soon we had, all these men dressing like women and doing videos.
Well, it goes back to the fourth class system at the academies. And I know you didn't graduate from the academy, Rob, but it's similar in OTS, I'm sure. You learn basic things and it's instilled in you. And it's Patton's quote, if you can't get them to wear the hat you want them to wear and the pants and salute the way you want them to salute, how are you going to get them to die for your country, for their country? So, I mean, that is leadership, right? I mean, that you, so it's the basics. And I think Napoleon said that victory in war starts with shine on a boot. So, I mean, you really the little things matter in the military.
They do.
Yeah, they do. And in combat aviation, I mean, our corporate culture is known for not obeying the rules that don't matter. So we have a little bit of that pushback on kind of stuff, on some kind of stuff in the Air Force and the aviation community. But when it comes to discipline and the ability to put fire on a target and defeat the enemy, those are the rules that matter. And the hands in the pocket thing, just to reiterate that, it's not a nit. I mean, it's a discipline. It's a discipline detail.
It's doing
Absolutely.
It's attention to detail. It's if you don't do it, it's why you sink $100 million ships from leaving the autopilot on, like the DEI captains in New Zealand did, or whatever. There's many.
Shoot down your own F-18s. Or hit it, or have your nuclear aircraft carrier collides with another ship in the Mediterranean. It's unbelievable. I mean, that's something I remember ever happening in my life.
No, we're going to have Commander Salamander on to discuss
Never
that.
saw it.
Too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, let me ask you real quickly, Rob, how about some of the people we see coming in? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think General Kane, it's a remarkable pick. Only somebody that won an election that has had the experience of being commander in chief before with a person with that kind of background. would have the chops to be able to pull somebody in. But that needs to happen more. You know, he's pulling him from retirement, promoting him, promoting him from 3-star to 4-star. I think he's a guard guy who's also served in the CIA. But Trump met him when he gave him the task of defeating the ISIS caliphate. You know, and his generals were telling him, you can't get this done in 4, 5, 10 years. Even this guy comes in and uses the right air assets, the right targeting, and the right ground forces, and in 3.5 weeks, they were finished. You know, so the bottom line is he gets stuff done. I used a little bit different phrase than stuff on X, but I mean, when I got asked about him, and that's the big thing about this guy. But the other big thing is that obviously, you know, he didn't complain and make a big noise when he got passed over for his 4-star. He just went out, went about his business and all that. But he seems to be very effective, and I hear great things. I mean, I think he's an F-16 pilot. When you're hearing good stuff out of the ground soft community, that says something.
Fighter pilot.
Especially an F-16 pilot. You know,
And Trump certainly made him famous over the last 4 years with the story of how he got rid of the caliphate. But
the real story, though, on the DoD side, especially and through all the departments, is Hegseth's a big win getting him installed and everything. But the real story is all the undersecretaries and the assistant secretaries is who gets put in there, and more importantly than that, not necessarily the who, because there's lots of qualified people, but it's the the question is it the people with the background that puts them inside the Beltway for most of their after military careers or most of their civilian careers? Or is it people that are highly professional that have not done that live out in the country, but have just as good or better qualifications to lead these organizations that are going to be brought in? What I expect to see is some attempt to strike a balance there. But honestly, if I were advising the president, I would be advising him to seriously consider all the top positions be from people that are from outside the Beltway region, that have not made careers at the Beltway or just outside of it, in Northern Virginia and Maryland and those kind of things, because those folks, as nice of people as they are, as professional as they are, their thinking is not what's necessary. What is necessary from a thinking perspective is boldness, the willingness, as you've seen this president and his small team that he's already got in do, is take initiatives that are completely outside of the norm that are being successful very rapidly.
It's moral courage, essentially.
Yeah. And it goes back to, John Boyd's creative destruction. CDM Media. That is the type of thinking, and that type of thinking doesn't come from people that have spent their entire careers as Beltway creatures. And again, I don't mean any personal offense by it. It's just they don't know how to think the way that's necessary. So we need people that have a professional background in things like defense, but haven't lived that Beltway life and have gone and done other things, so that they can bring creative destruction type thinking to this process and get moving. And it's those layers that I'm watching for to see who and the how much gets done.
You and I are on the same sheet of music on that. I agree with you 100%. It needs to be new thinking, new people, people that have done balance sheets, people that have paid people, hired. We just got to have a different way of thinking in DC. We're starting to see it, especially with Elon and what he's doing at Doge. That's the kind of innovation we need. How's your show going? The Rob Maness Show. How's that going?
It's doing great. We're live 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday at 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern on Worldview Tube, Rumble, my website, robmaness.com, on X at Rob Maness, and Facebook and Getter. And we go live on Rumble now. We used to just have an upload channel. Now we're live on that channel every day, and it's doing fantastic.
And I saw you're on Truth Social as well. What is their streaming, Truth Plus or?
Yeah, Truth Social Plus. We're on there. Worldview Tube runs the show on there. It's up 24/7 with a 24/7 stream, and the network itself is up on Roku and Amazon Fire. I think we're on there, and of course we've got apps, Roku app, and we've got a iOS, and I think the other apps out now too.
You guys, you're getting
Oh,
out
well.
there. I'm seeing a lot of your stuff. So good. It's good to see it. We need more of this. Got to get the truth out there. That's for sure.
Yeah, and whether you're inside or outside of the government, I mean, I think it's incumbent on people like us that have a professional background in government in more ways than just military to be speaking out if we're on the outside and be willing to go in if we get asked to go in and do a job.
Agree. Rob, thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Rob.
it.
Take care.
You take care.
Bye-bye.
It's News from the Edge. It's Output with John Ritchie and L. Todd Wood.
Through the pandemic, we can never be caught unprepared again. And so many Americans, when COVID hit, they had nothing in the house. Stores were shut down and doctors' offices were shut down. And even if doctors prescribed drugs, hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, pharmacists wouldn't fill the prescriptions. That was a nightmare.
Now the situation is much worse. We have these horrible supply chain problems. In our emergency medical kit at the Wellness Company, we have 8 prescription drugs that are all potentially life-saving.
Most people who died with COVID, they died in the hospital because they didn't receive early treatment.
Every American family should have one of these.
I can tell you the Wellness Company kit is the answer.
I'm David Cross, and you may know me from my election integrity work, but I also own U.S. Asset Management, a family-owned and operated investment advisory practice. I'm a certified portfolio manager, and my job is to help you make better decisions with your money. One of the things we try to avoid is investing in companies that push the woke agenda. If you're invested with one of the big firms out there, there's a pretty good chance that you're feeding the beast that hates your values. Our company is 100% conservative, and we'd love to have an opportunity to work with you. Check us out at us-am.com and look for our big, proud American Eagle logo.
And I want to welcome everybody back. One thing I want to remind everybody, CDM Metals, right, Todd? CDM Metals.
Yeah, CDM Metals, cdmmetals.com.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, what we're seeing with the low liquidity of gold right now. We're seeing that out of the UK Bank of London, which is where a lot of that gold comes through. And so now that that's happening, people ought to be looking at how they can get into precious metals.
We just did an interview with blanking his name at Finance Technology, Ed Dowd. He's projecting some kind of recession correction, at least in the short run for the markets. Gold is scarce right now. They can't fill the orders in London, as you said. They're also talking about at the Fed of revaluing gold higher to help with some of the inflationary and debt payback issues. So now's the time to get into gold. There was one. So if you've got an IRA that you rolled over when you retired or whatever, put it with Advisor Metals at cdmmetals.com and put some of it. Talk to them. It's an easy conversation. Go to cdmmetals.com and they'll connect with you and have a conversation.
CDM Metals, that's the place to go, cdmmetals.com. Earlier on, we were talking about what's going on in Europe, but one of the things that I wanted to touch on as well was this idea, and we carried some reporting on CDM about this whole, there's more sanctions, all the things that the Western globalists are trying to do to keep things going in with Ukraine and this war, and just trying to, now UK's unveiled that they're going to come up with all these sweeping sanctions on Russia and all of its global backers, on Russia's global backers. So this thing, because now we're hearing that Trump, and this came out of the White House yesterday, Trump, they believe they're going to have some kind of a peace agreement done probably within the next week. Now that was them saying that. They believe that, and I have to assume that for them to go out on a limb and say something like that, they're probably pretty close. Now you had Macron in town yesterday. They had a long session over at the White House, and we're talking about calls between President Trump and in this bilateral engagement that he had with Macron. And then they got the EU on calls, conference calls, things like that. And they talked about it in the White House. But I think that is what we're seeing that's leading up to Trump being able to say, that, he believes that something's going to be done within the next few days. But you could see in that back and forth the presser that they did right after these calls and meetings, these bilateral meetings, you could see that what was Trump saying? Trump was saying, I think we're going to have something done. He talked about the stupidity of this war. He said it right there in front of Macron, right there in front of everybody. He said it should have never been done. This has caused death, destruction, the same things he said, but he said it in front of Macron and wanted Macron to hear it and have to stay in front of the press, the international press, and take it. And you saw Macron try to push
back and act manly, but then Trump crushed his collarbone with that. With
that handshake. but yeah, I think that there may have been a little bit of disagreement in the bilateral meeting, but I think Trump came out and said, this is what's going to happen, and you can either take it or leave it. I'll pull your chicken wing off or something. But I mean, he just made it clear that this is what's going to happen, and we're going to have an agreement here one way or another. But then you had Starmer. He comes over here. He was in D.C. I don't know if that meeting's happened yet. My guess is he was over here meeting with some of the.
He's going to get the same treatment.
He's going to get the same treatment. There is no way if he goes into that White House that he's going to leave. Yeah, he's going to have to knock when he comes. Nobody's going to meet him. Maybe one of the Marines will come and open the door for him or something. But, he's going to have the same issues because Trump is making it clear to each and every one of these guys, this is done. It's over. But what if they said, well, you saw the Danes came out and said they want to get more weapons. They want to develop weapons.
They're wailing and gnashing their teeth, but it's not going to happen. I mean, they may have some European peacekeepers in there. They won't be official NATO troops. Russia won't allow that. They may let them put some in Western Ukraine. But they don't have the money or the forces.
That's the thing I was about to say. If you want to go out there and raise capital, you guys have a major, and I'm talking about the EU right now. You have a major financial problem coming your way. You have 3 countries trying sovereign debt issue. That's like pulling the fire alarm. When you're sovereign debt, your sovereign fund is having a debt issue, you've got problems because you got to remember the EU countries, unlike the US, which shouldn't be able to do it anyway, they can't print more money. They have no place to go for more money. They have to either tax it or they've got to go borrow it. But they don't, it's not like they can print dollars and go inflate all inflation and everything. And the problem they have is they're going to have to figure out ways to be able to afford. Now they got to come up with security. Some of them are going to have to create armies. Look at France. France hadn't had a standing army in years.
Well, Starmer came out and said, okay, we're going to not send so much foreign aid so we can rebuild our military. It was like 2% of the budget. I mean, it's a drop, right?
And then you have the Danes come out and say, we're going to initiate weapons development because here's what they said, quote unquote, they have to prepare for a time when they start to prepare for a security away from the U.S.
It's like that scene in We Were Soldiers with Mel Gibson and the other actor, and like, gentlemen, prepare to defend yourselves.
I know, exactly. And look, this is something that needed to be done a long time ago. Look, you want to go develop weapon systems, develop weapon systems. You go out, raise your capital, figure out how you're going to fund it, and build.
You can buy ours. Buy
Yeah.
ours. We
Yeah.
got a great, we got a defense industry. Buy our. That's what Trump's
Yeah.
pushing. Buy our
That's
weapons.
it. You can have those weapons, but you're going to have to figure out how to fund yourselves and start developing your own military. Look, he went from, what was it? They were looking for 1.5 in NATO, 2 points. They wanted you to get up to 2, I think was your full amount. Now he's telling them, look, the U.S. has to do 5 out of their GDP. You do the same now.
Well, Germany,
5%.
especially is just ridiculous. I mean, there's all kind of videos of them doing, exercises with black painted broomsticks for guns, and the tanks don't work, and it's just absurd.
They had the pretend weapons when I was there. I was there in the 80s during the East and West German times. And when I was there, they couldn't go out with us because they didn't have weapons. They used and it was just ridiculous. And I think back then France had some sort of military. It was like that. It was like a bunch of Boy Scouts or something, but that was it. And so, what we're seeing now has to happen. They have to start getting, Russia is their problem.
It really is. And, I've been thinking about our show yesterday and the fact that the Ukraine war, along with all the other unrestricted warfare, you got to look at the consequences of world happenings, right? And the consequences of the Ukraine war is a less powerful U.S. and a focus on Russia and not China. So I really think that, and I bet Trump, if he's smart, will play off the old Russian fears of China. They're not getting parts of Siberia back where they lease the land to the Chinese. Yeah. So, I mean, that's a serious issue. And Trump is smart to break that up and bring it back.
Yeah. No, this is gonna have to happen. And we take care of the seas and what's gonna happen in the Atlantic and the Pacific. Fine. We're there. But those land wars in Europe, let them have them. Let you guys can handle that. You guys do that. And we'll step up where we need to step up from a global security standpoint, but it's got to be how it secures us as well.
Well, and I think that gets me, John, is the sickness of the mind that would actually push that kind of war.
Yeah.
I mean, the reason you don't have any media there, as we've talked about, is because they don't want people to see what's happening to those human beings. And civilians, the babies, the women, the old people. I mean, they're just getting, literally just vaporized and mutilated, ripped apart.
Yeah.
Day after day, thousands of them.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just not okay. And
agree.
It needs to
agree 100%. It's time for this. I agree. We're going to go to a quick break, but when we get back, I want to talk. We were talking about the pivot to China, and there's something significant happening there. I'd like to jump on that in the last segment right after this short
It's
break.
News from the Edge. It's Output with John Ritchie and L. Todd Wood.
Our world is changing rapidly. Many crucial systems we depend upon are collapsing. And the most important system that is failing is the food supply.
Mr. President, this Council is more than aware of the multiple challenges and threats the world is facing today. But the threat of famine, people starving slowly to death, must be a red line.
These food prices are going to keep going up and up, and they're going to keep feeding excuse after excuse, narrative after narrative.
Yeah.
You're going to have to get off that treadmill and start getting more autonomous with your own food growing.
You want to make sure that you can eat, because frankly, food is the biggest issue as we are going through these transitions.
But amidst the chaos, there is a path to resilience. Marjorie Wildcraft is the female leader of the survival and preparedness movement. Marjorie has taught millions of people how to grow an abundance of food in a grid-down situation, even if you have no experience, are older, or out of shape.
I've spent decades finding the fastest, easiest, and funnest ways for the average person to be able to grow a lot of food. I've created a step-by-step process that's so simple that even kids to elders have been using it in order to grow a lot of their own food. And you can too, even if you have no experience, you're older, or you're out of shape.
Growing your own food is like printing your own money. Get started today.
If you haven't noticed, gold has reached a new high, all-time highs actually, and keeps going up every day. Why is that? It's because precious metals are a long-time historical store of value. And if you own a portfolio and you have assets in the fiat currencies, i.e. stocks, bonds, cash, or whatever, You're vulnerable to hyperinflation, which is coming as our debt explodes another trillion every 90 days. It's really scary. So how do you protect yourself? Go to Advisor Metals. If you look on any of our cdm.press sites, about halfway down, there's an ad for Advisor Metals. Click on it, fill out the form for your contact info, and Ira Bishotsky will contact you and talk to you. It's an easy conversation. There's no sales pitch. He's completely verified by us. He has a regulatory background we've checked into. We've checked with his bankers. We've checked with his IRA custodians for metals, and we can highly recommend Advisor Metals and IRA. So go to Advisor Metals. If you call them directly, tell them we sent you at CDM, and he'll definitely take care of you. But protect your portfolio because you really need to. It's coming. Thank you.
And I want to welcome you all back. And, for this last segment, I wanted to talk a little bit. We talked a little bit about what's going on with China, this idea of kind of pivoting over to China. Well, yesterday we talked about Apple. Here comes Apple. Mm-hmm. Apple's promising a $500 billion investment into manufacturing facilities across the United States. They're not all going to just be parked in Silicon Valley. They're talking about a major development, major production facility in Texas, Nevada, Arizona. They've already started stuff in Arizona, and they're talking about going to Michigan. I think Arizona. They're going to still do a little bit in California and Washington State, but what it was really is more of a push, which is something Trump's wanted. Trump's wanted to see more of this stuff go out to fly over America. He's tired of the coastal areas always getting all the goods, and that's what's happened over decades, over the past half century. We've seen everything develop in, up in Washington, Seattle, down to Silicon Valley, San Francisco, LA, or you can go into New York, you can go to DC, places like that. But what interests me about this is that right after Tim Cook came out and made this announcement, Trump made this announcement, we then had Xi Jinping brought the corporate leaders of China together to have a discussion about what the Chinese corporations need to be doing to start driving and helping development and growth in China. What interests me about this is because Xi Jinping's never going to bring them back and have a discussion. What Xi Jinping brought him in to do was say, I'm bringing you all in, and I'm letting you know you're going to have to start sinking money into, the CCP. You're going to have to put money in here because we're going to start losing money. He knows this. Their financial system's collapsing. Their real estate's collapsing. And so here you have Tim Cook saying, look, we're going to go back into America. It's going to be much more fruitful for us. It makes more sense for Apple. Okay, fine, whatever. Trump, I'm sure, had to get his ear and get his attention, and he did so. $500 billion. Now, here you have Alibaba, one of the big e-commerce platforms in China that now has had to, and their CEO, Ma, I believe is his last name, had to come in with, he's coming in with $52 billion, $52.4 billion.
Into the U.S.?
No, into China.
And didn't he disappear for a while? What happened to him?
He has been captured in China, if you will. He has been he's not allowed, they haven't allowed him. He was traveling a lot and doing a lot of things when he first started, but I think they pulled his leash in. He is not, and his assets are in China. They have laid it out. None of that. He's not going to be able to take his stuff. And of course they did the same thing with ByteDance and TikTok and all that. So making sure that none of that stuff was anything that was in China had to stay in China. I mean, and they use terms like data sovereignties, where your servers are located, where you're doing this. But for China, it's cash. That's it. I want everybody to understand when China's having to go pick the pocket of Alibaba and all the other e-commerce sites there that really do depend on global audiences, global consumers, they've got problems. They've got serious problems. And those problems, this tells you a lot right here, because I think with them understanding that Apple, and I think Apple's going to have some problems too, because I think they'll start, as Apple does more and more in the US, they're going to start seizing up Apple stuff, I'm sure, out there. I can't imagine they're going to let Apple take a bunch of their cash.
Well, I think we're going to have a revolution in technology, kind of an evolution, I should say. All these companies have shown their true colors. Nobody trusts them. People are yearning for some new up and start companies to come in and like a Yahoo to Google kind of thing,
Agree.
And people want something new, and they thought Google was it, but don't be evil. But that was obviously, they removed that, and they're pretty damn evil now. So, I think people are looking for opportunities. As soon as that comes along, you can never predict it. They're going to migrate.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, and I think Trump's trying to lay the foundation for that. I think he's laying the foundation for people to have, for us to have new thinking and new technologies and new ways of doing things.
A great computer, but I sure don't want to buy another one. I mean, I don't want to be. I mean, they just opened up their entire files to the UK, all the encrypted cloud.
And something to understand about that. Remember, I talk about exiled operations. Our people will be out there accessing that, because what they can't do here, they're going to go out there, and the people of this, the deep staters, they'll all be out there. That's why they make good friends with Stearns and all these people, because as Apple has opened that up, they're going to allow U.S.
Facebook's the same way. I mean, nobody trusts these people. So
just be aware of it. Yeah. No, they're definitely, our deep staters are going to be out there accessing that stuff through these portals, where these countries who have been able to get, whether it's into your platforms, your
Brazil,
VPNs, challenge on VPNs so that they can get that. I mean, all that stuff becomes pretty big deals. So you got to be aware of it and follow it. We'll do it here as well. Call it out when we see it. Todd, how do people follow you?
At Real L. Todd Wood on X. Please support me there. Please go to ltoddwood.com. I guarantee you the novels there will keep you up at night. So check them out.
Definitely do that. Support all of our advertisers, all of our supporters. Definitely give them your support. That's what keeps us on air and keeps us going. Independent media, that's what we need, and we need more of it. I want to thank Mark Mitchell and Rob Maness for joining us today. Great interviews with both of them. Appreciate them. Always good contributors to the show. You can follow me. I am John Ritchie on X, at I am John Ritchie on X. We are on YouTube, Rumble. You can catch our streams, and you can get us on demand there as well. I want to thank you for joining us. We are on 10 to noon Eastern time, Monday through Friday. And I hope you'll join us again tomorrow right here on Output.
This has been an Output Digital and CDM production.